Just getting a bit carried away there, listening to the track. Welcome everybody to this week's Behind the Music. Jeff and myself, we're happy to be here. We're happy to have you joining us. This week we're just going to talk a little bit about behind the music, some of the gear that we use, why we've chosen that gear. We're not going to get too technical, but we just thought it might be something interesting you might want to know, you might find a little bit interesting. Yeah, it's something that you don't really hear musicians talk about, and you get to hear the finished product and not necessarily what we actually use in terms of equipment, amps, guitars, string gauge sizes and things like that. But like I said, we're going to get too technical. We are well aware not everybody's a musician, not everybody might find it interesting, some will, but hey, so let's go. Jeff, take it away, my bro.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed, Clive. I'd just like to say welcome to everybody. As Clive's already said, welcome to this show. We're going to be talking, music gear. And yeah, we both know that people have their own preferences. Musicians have been playing with their own gear for a while and will know why they like what they like. They're trying to get a particular sound, trying to find something unique. And a lot of musicians I talk to are always experimenting. You know, they have a bit of kit, then they change it soon after. Many other guys, though, have settled on what they've got, and they're quite happy with it. So, again, we're not going to get too technical, but we just want to kind of share what we use. And also, again, just to spark off conversation out there, if you've got stuff that you like, by all means, drop us in a comment. Let us know your setup, what you like doing, what you like to hear, and we'll take it from there. Yeah. So, Clive, you've mentioned bass, and we had a bass players loving last week with Colin Peters, who was
great
to have along. And after that show, I think we must have talked for about a couple of hours after that, which was really interesting. And there was just so much that we would have liked to have shared with everybody else on that. But that was interesting. And listening to you guys, you were talking very much about the basses that you use and some of your heroes and why they use them. So let me let you start off and just tell me a little bit about what you've got right now and what's kind of attracted you to that setup.
Okay, so when I first started out on bass, I had a PV stack. I had actually a 15-inch bottom cab and a 4x10 top cab, and I was using, I think, PV Mark III head, and I wasn't really getting what I needed out of that. I moved on to then, which was a PV T-Max head. The thing about the T-Max for me, it got me into using graphics and sculpturing sounds. It had a lot of what you called, well, it had like a parametric graphic. And if you look at it, it looked a bit like a graphic equalizer on your hi-fi at home. And then it had a lot of pots, dials like decibel dial-ins, bass, low bass, mid bass, high top end, things like that. All in all, it was a bit complicated to use for me, to be honest. When it comes to my setup, I've kind of always been a very simple guy. It's the same with my guitar setup. I know some guys prefer to have pedals and so forth, like yourself, you know. I'm not against pedals. I don't mind pedals. But I would sooner have an amp that would have a controller that I can access the sounds, the flanges and the choruses and the effects from within the amp that way. I just found it a little easier that way. So my bass amp that I've actually stumbled on and I'm settled on is actually now TC Electronics. And I've got a BH 250 head, 2x12 cab and a 2x10 cab. And I tell you something, man, it is sweet. And it's a very simple, in fact, I've got the head here. I'll tell you what, let me just get this. I forgot, I've actually got my gear here. Now, just so you can see. Now, this is what we call a micro head. You can, but this little gizmo here gives me everything I need on the stage. Now, this fits into my gig bag. Not only that, when it pumps, and the best thing about it is it's just dials, and there's no parametric EQ because it's not required. TC Electronic heads give me what I need, along with my Fender Jazz or my Core Artisan, whether I use in 6-string, 5-string or 4, it doesn't really matter. I find it very easy to set up, and to be honest, live and recording, I've used it for recording and I've used it live and even at home in my studio here, and I find it very, very, very dynamic in terms of I can dial in a tone, whereas the same tone I would hear from my speaker is what I would get. That's the signal I get on my recording, and that's what I love about TC Electronics. I believe that what I'm hearing on my cab on the stage is what I'm getting out front of house. It's got a nice little direct out on the back. It's not fussy. It's not full of bells and whistles, which is what I like, but it delivers and it's reliable. I've had this one now for some time. So yeah, man. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Clive, that's really interesting. Yeah, that kind of mix between kind of sort of simplicity and efficiency, really, I guess, is what you're really saying. Now, just tell me a little bit about, like, I mean, obviously the kind of music determines that. So what is the kind of sound that you really want to hear from your bass when you've got it set up nicely? I mean,
well,
top end, is it kind of a big mid-range? What's the deal?
I don't want it too boomy and I don't want it too top end, to be honest. More or less even, nice and even, because, you know, some of the notes can get muddy when you're on stage if it's too bottomy, and it can be a bit too sharp and stand out a little bit too much. I guess it's just to get that balance overall from string to string, so that when you are playing live, sometimes you've got to dig in a little bit hard, you've got to play a bit soft. Everything's still there, you don't really lose anything, you know. So a nice even tone is what I go for. Where, even though, you know, like we're playing for Annette and Annette predominantly reggae, still I know reggae can be a bit deep with the bass. But still, a nice, even, round, full tone is what I go for, to be honest.
And how much tweaking are you doing on stage, like between songs or in between venues? I mean, have you found that some venues differ? I suppose it's almost like a leading question, because some people, you know, playing one venue and your setup has to be totally different from another. How much time do you spend tweaking on stage to get that right, even after sound check?
Not much, to be honest. When I was using the other amps, it was a lot. With the TC, I find it's literally plug in and go. I know my TC like the back of my hand, and so I kind of have two basic sets. The beauty of this amp is that I can have two settings and access them through foot pedal.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. I was talking to a mate of mine at work just Wednesday, and you know, we sometimes have these little conversations about, he's not a musician, but he loves, you know, he loves music, he loves drums and things like that. So we were talking and about a few things. So I said to him, oh, you know, you'd love my setup that I've got. So I said to him, when I'm on stage, it's funny, people might see that I'm looking at my phone, looking down, and might think I'm rude. But I'm not. Actually, the brain of my amp is controlled by an app on my phone.
Okay.
And he was like, totally amazed, you know. But my bass amp and my guitar rig, they're controlled by apps from my phone.
Okay.
And, yeah. So, you know, he sort of thought, what are you talking about? Well, how can you use your phone to set up your amp? So I showed him, you know, I said, it's all done by Bluetooth. And, you know, that's why I said, sometimes I said to him, you'll see some people on the stage, they might have a MacBook or an iPad or a tablet. I said, that's what it's for. That's what they're doing. And it's not that they, you know, they're playing a game while they're playing.
Send an email.
They're actually controlling their tone and their sound, and they can switch effects as well and so forth. You know, I said, it's like sound engineers now. I said, normally, you know, when you got a digital setup, you know, you see them walking around with an iPad. I said, what they're actually doing is setting the sound and just fine tuning the sound using an app that goes with that particular desk. And I said, yeah, that's how far we've come now with instruments. I said, yeah, I'm using an app to control it. So it kind of blew his mind, you know, because basically he was talking about Jimi Hendrix and guitars and things like that. So that's how we got into that. Yeah. So I then showed him, you know, what I use online and things like that. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. And again, you know, it's one of those things that you think people wouldn't find interesting. I guess with musicians, we don't really talk about the stuff that we use because we sort of think, well, people won't find it interesting, but some people do, apparently, you know. Yeah. Some people do. So, yeah.
So are you using any kind of effects that go with that to help you with your sound, or are you not really kind of into sort of the modulation that much?
Bass wise, sometimes chorus, depending on if it's like a nice soft track, bit of compression, mid scoop compression. It all depends if it's slapping. Slap bass, or depends on what I'm doing, but yeah, I use some modulation and maybe a little bit of chorus sometimes, you know. I have experimented using a wah-wah on bass, and it is nice.
Right.
It is nice. It is nice. I have to admit. Yeah, I've still got my old Bose ME5 stock box. Yeah, blue one. Yeah, and yeah, that's got a nice whammy pedal on it. Yeah, that is
very nice.
That is very nice. So yeah. I think going forward, it's something that I actually want to experiment with a little bit more on the rootsy side of dub plate, sort of reggae sort of side. You know, see how give it a go and let's see what people think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, thank you. Listen, you're listening to Behind the Music. We're talking today about a little bit more about the instrumentation and what we do when we play as musicians, the instruments we're using, and why we use them and what we're looking for. We've just been speaking to Clive about kind of his bass rig and what he's using, and we appreciate that people have their own styles, they have their own preferences. Drop something in and let us know what you're using and why, what you're looking for out of your equipment, what you're looking to hear, and anything else that you feel, you know, as you know, you want to share any of that with young musicians who are coming up, and kind of just give them a word of advice as to what to look for. That'd be really helpful indeed. I know we've been talking a little bit about bass here, and Clive has tempered with a wah-wah pedal, which I've never heard on the bass before. Well, listen, I know back from the 60s and 70s where you had like a lot of experimental music going on. A lot of bass riggers were meddling with pedals and that kind of stuff, and that's changed along the years somewhat now. And Clive, what is the ideal kind of thing that you would really, what really floats your boat? When do you really know, yeah, man, this it's on it today? What is that kind of sound that you like to hear?
Well, you know what? I tell you what. Let me just play a little bit of this track. Yeah, this is a track that was recorded for a gospel reggae artist called Lighty, and I played bass on this track. And interestingly, I didn't actually use my amp at the time. Did and I straight into an Avalon preamp, straight into the system, and literally my bass, my Fender Jazz was set flat, and this is what came out. I might start dancing now.
Yes, my brothers, I know we've been caught up in sea, locked up in the web of Satan's strife. But we've got a chance to leave and to make our life right. Look to the front, 'cause he will set you free. No more fighting, let's all stand together. We've got a chance to lead,
Right,
and to make our life right.
so listen, now that bass line there, okay, now I went straight into the live room, straight into the engineer's room. This was recorded at CMAT Studio in Birmingham, and it was Ronnie Francis on keys and myself. And the interesting thing was, we recorded that track, yeah, just bass and keys to a click.
Okay.
Ghost vocals. Everything you hear
after
that was done by the producer, Paul Duggan, afterwards.
Okay.
And yeah, the vibe, you're talking about the vibe was nice. You know, listen, let me just read this. Hazel Jordan, she says she's not a musician, but she loves a good bass line. You know,
Hazel.
Now, this is what I'm talking about. Who doesn't love a good, you see, when the bass is just nice, it doesn't have to be too fat, it doesn't have to be too thin. When it's just right, you see, and you give the engineer enough headroom when he's gonna mix that down. Listen, when this one was mixed down, now you hear what I'm talking about, yeah? Now you hear what I'm talking about. And, you know, I feel so, I'm very proud of that track, because the fact that, you know, like I said, if you listen to that, you think it was a full band in the studio.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't. I wasn't even in the live room. Okay. I was in the engineer's room, plugged into the Avalon preamp and went for it.
Wow.
Just went for it. And interestingly, you know, the funny thing is, we're actually jamming at the start of that. Me and Ronnie and myself were actually doing this little Latin thing, and then all of a sudden, you know, we didn't know Owen had the tape going, and Lloyd just started singing, and then we had to come out this Latin thing and go into this reggae, and but hey, everything works. It works. You know, you're listening to it, you wouldn't know that, but this is a little bit about behind that track, you know, yeah. But yeah, I love it. I love that track. Love it.
Listen, that's amazing. I mean, for me, one of those things that come out of that is very much kind of like, as you said, when you're actually doing stuff in the studio and you're actually bouncing stuff off people, you know, it's amazing that you actually then get ideas and you just play together as a crew, what's going on. And, you know, it's just amazing, you know, things just come out right there. And the next thing you know, that that's part of the track, and people are kind of really happy with that, which is like just really phenomenal. So that's really interesting and excellent to kind of know. You talked about having the click behind that, and the rest of that was kind of engineered behind. How is that all sounding now when you listen back at that? What do you think of the kind of the final effect, really?
I love the mix. Obviously, the intro was watered down a little bit. The Latin we were jamming to was very heavy at the start of that track. But then again, like I said, we weren't aware that they'd started recording. Like I said, we were just jamming, getting ready while they were sorting some technical stuff out. Lloyd just jumped on the mic, went for it, and we had to make that switch. But but I love it because it was spontaneous. And if you were listening to that track as it was, before it was all mixed and that, I don't think people would connect the two. I don't think they would think, oh, I think if they heard the intro, in fact, we tested it on somebody once, and this person went, oh, I like that, and they were getting ready for all this Latin stuff. When the reggae dropped, they goes, huh? Where did that come from? And I think, sometimes it's good to be different. Mix it up a bit. That's what it's all about. You know what I mean? That's what it's all about. Mix it up a bit, man. I mean, I'm experimenting with some things here, and I won't let nothing off, but some of it, like the intro, it's a little guitar African jazz thing mash up going into reggae, and I think that's me, and some people might say it's a little bit undisciplined music wise, but I think it's about expressing what you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
I got some other weird things going on. Listen, I got this dub plate that I'm doing with classical guitar, mate, and it's I love it. Acoustic guitar. I call it the acoustic guitar dub.
And let me just interject there, Clive, because probably some people who haven't listened to any of the previous shows may not know these, but you're originally a guitarist, not a bassist. So
I am. Yeah.
So just tell us how that influences, if any, what you hear on the bass at all.
You know what? Somebody once said to me, this was going back some years, and this guy said to me, "Wow, bass players always watch when lead guitarists go on bass." What? Why? Why? What's the issue? Because you like to. Because when you're doing runs, your fingers are already used to doing the runs and the articulation.
Yeah.
Had a point actually. Had a point because I remember a couple of years back in Milton Keynes, I was actually assisting Mike Brown on stage. He was doing something in Milton Keynes, and I was doing bass for him, and he chose this track. Now I thought he'd have a little mercy on me. He chose this track where it had a bass lead, but there was something about this lead that I just couldn't get my head around. I'm rehearsing it, but I kept thinking, how's the guy doing that and doing that? When I actually researched the track, there were two bass players.
Okay.
Two bass players. So I'm thinking, oh, maybe he doesn't want me to do that bit then. Maybe he's going to cut that bit out. No. And I had to improvise, and I thought he was going to have a little bit of mercy on me. And all he said to me was, don't run out of steam, bruv. Don't run out of steam. And so we did this solo. And then when I sort of gave him the nod to hand back to him, he said, go again. I thought, so I guess, yeah.
Oh, listen, That is fantastic. I've just seen something come up from Patrick, Patrick Solomon, who I'm sure Clive you know.
I
Listening
know
to Scott saying that you
I know
sing as well. So not only are you a guitarist, you play
I
bass,
know
but you
Mr.
sing. Keep that one quiet, man.
People's letting everything out about me now. Mr. Clive can sing too. Thanks a lot, Patrick. I appreciate that. Let the world know that I can sing as well. It's one of those things that yeah, I've been a worship leader. Different churches that we've fellowshipped at, taken part in worship, led worship. Sometimes with my guitar or my bass or no instrument at all depends on the setup and the requirements. But yeah, I sing as well. Not a lot.
Man, man of many talents, man of many talents. But listen, you know, I mean, I guess that this is what God has given us. He's given us our gift, and it's what we give back, I guess, you know. And I guess if I was to say anything to sort of any of the young musicians or up and coming musicians, you might not be young in age, but you may be young in the experience or your ministry or whatever. Just do it with a true heart, you know. That's the kind of worship that God He wants from us. He's just, you know, we worship Him in spirit and in truth. So once we give our spirit and it's in truth, man, the Lord will find it acceptable, and that's what we want to give. We just give Him our best. So so somebody's already said.
I'm getting in trouble now. Look at that, Alex. Listen. The lady I pay for is now asking, hang on a minute, you're my MD and I didn't know you could sing. Really? Here we go. Here we go.
There we go. So the next practice, when we're out of lockdown, I bet you on the BVs, man.
Probably when everybody sees me on the MD mic, they're going to think now I'm actually doing BVs. They won't know which what I'm doing, whether I'm talking to the band or actually singing.
There we go, man.
Oh my days. This is going to be so funny going forward. Oh gosh.
Oh dear, Clive. Well, listen, this is all about kind of sharing experiences, and this is the stuff that we're talking about. This is the stuff behind the music that you don't see. How many of us knew that Clive was a worship leader? Listen, and how many of us knew that Clive could sing? This is the stuff that's happening behind the music. We're glad that you could join us, and we hope that you've really enjoyed listening to this experience. And we just thank Clive for really kind of sharing that kind of base knowledge, really. And again, if you've got stuff that you'd like to say, by all means, dial in, drop us a note. Let us know what's going on with you. We will be talking more about instrumentation, music, our gifting, our instruments. We've also mentioned stuff about kind, you know, how you actually set up in a hall with a, you know, with a music engineer. We'll hopefully have some of those guys coming on as well and let us know what they think of musicians. So I'm sure that, you know, it's all stuff to learn, and we're happy to share what we know, and to kind of leave something out there so that people don't fall into the same pit, but, you know, we'll step on over and walk on by. So God bless you. Clive, just in rounding up, if you had to give a tip to a young musician, a young person coming up, somebody, or maybe somebody who has kind of got to a stage where they just want to sort of take the next step forward in their bass career or something, what would you say to them?
I would say find somebody, an artist that you can connect with. The style, you know, be true to the style that you want to bring out. And when it comes to tone, bring out what you feel, not necessarily emulating what you hear somebody else play. Bring out what you feel. Try and find what's inside you that wants to come out, that needs to come out. You know, my son's a bass player, and Brad is just phenomenal. You know, he's taken control of my Fender Jazz, and I don't really mind, because the thing is, when I watch him play and I hear him play and I hear his tone, it's different to mine. His feel is different to mine, but yet he's using the same bass that I play. Now I can take that bass and make it sound a little bit different, which is what you want. You know, he's not emulating me. Bradley's got his own sound. He's got his own signature sound, his own tone, his own feel, and that's what you want. Just go for what you feel you need to bring out. And you know, I would always say, if you can't afford a brand new instrument and you've got to buy secondhand, try and go for the best secondhand you can. There's no harm in buying secondhand Fender, secondhand Yamaha. You know, it's all about you bonding with your instrument. So yeah, you and the instrument become one.
Clive, oh, wow, those are real words of wisdom, and something I kind of really sort of underscore myself. Be true to yourself. Don't feel pressure to be like anybody else, but if you do what you do and you do it from a true and genuine heart, then, you know, one, the Lord will find it acceptable in his sight, because he's given you something that's different from everybody else. And just do the best that you can. Just try and buy the best gear that you can. Just be a good steward of your talent, and just let God use you according to his will. Clive, that was absolutely fantastic. We're gonna end soon, so Clive, I'm gonna just ask you just to shout out before we quit for this week.
Well, listen, guys, thank you for tuning in, and we're hoping to have some very interesting guests going forward. We were just getting over the Easter period, didn't really want to trouble anybody. We know it's time with family and everything like that. But going forward, yeah, and just please keep looking out for the links. And this is Behind the Music, the show for musicians, about musicians, by musicians, and we are now going to sign off. Thank you very much for tuning in all around the world. Thank you. God bless you.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.